Welcome back to the Daily Dope. So if you were online today, you might have ran into this story because, oh my God, I've seen this story like everywhere I looked. So we're going to break this down. Actually, we're not going to really break this down. We're just going to look at the phenomenon of this story exploding. And then we're going to go on some common sense and some basic facts as to why this should not be this. This is all this story about how on 420 you have a more of a risk of going out on the highways, apparently. This is because of this study right here that was published in the Journal of American Medical Association by John A. Staples and Donald A. Redelmier. First, we're going to start with the video. Let's check this out.
An analysis of 25 years of U.S. car crash data found a slight increase in fatal car crashes on marijuana users' annual April 20 celebration. The analysis looked at traffic data from 1992 to 2016 and found a 12% overall increase. The Vancouver researchers say that amounts to an extra 142 deaths nationwide on the pot holiday 420. Other studies link.
It's a little misleading how he threw that statistic out there like that. So let's look at that again. That amounted to 142 additional deaths over the 25-year study. Doesn't sound as bad, does it? At first he almost made it sound like that was 152 extra deaths a year or something, 142. But yeah, that significantly not that big of a deal already. What else you got?
Taking alcohol to driving have found elevated risks on Super Bowl Sunday and New Year's Eve. Colorado and Washington.
I've seen a statistic on St. Patrick's Day where drunk driving fatalities go up 100 like 100%.
Washington State became the first to legalize marijuana for recreational use in 2012. Dr. Andrew Monti, an emergency medicine physician and toxicology expert, says studies show that marijuana use can increase the risk of motor vehicle collisions.
Driving on that day may actually have some people that are intoxicated with cannabis, and that's the link here. I think it's very important to realize that this study does not show causation of cannabis use and motor vehicle collisions and or fatal motor vehicle collisions.
That's pretty much all you need to know right there. The study, although they try very hard to talk about marijuana being dangerous to drive after you've consumed it and all this other stuff, and then the age group of people that were, the most, like the age group was the younger age groups. That's where the most increase in wrecks happened on 420. Well, guess what? That's where all the wrecks are increased on any day of the year. So that's, you really got to take everything that this study says with a grain of salt. But that's not how the publishers of most of the articles, and definitely not how the doctors themselves kind of like, I guess you would say, market their study, even in the text of the abstract.
It's unclear how much marijuana has affected drivers. In Colorado, authorities began keeping statistics in 2014 and say 15% of driving under the influence charges involve marijuana. In Washington, it's a bit problematic.
We can't extract that DUI if it was, marijuana as far as the drug or another drug. So we can't.
See, that's a big issue with all these. I don't like calling them studies, but they keep acting like if they do a study and they prove some negative stuff with their voodoo number work, then it's valid and legitimate, and they can warn you, oh, Reefer Madness, hey, guess what? This is scary. You know, if that's fine. You know, I'll give you that if you'll let us do that. If you'll let us be like, okay, well, we looked at the numbers and literally on 420, an extra 2 million people are fucking driving stoned as opposed to like any other day of the week. So therefore, if there was a slight increase in fatal car accidents, you know, it's still insignificant because the number of people driving stones is just a big mountain. It's just a washout. But furthermore, what he said is very important because, as always, as with any of their studies that they do when they pour over 25 years worth of data from the Highway Transportation Safety Bureau, they don't have any distinction between these car accidents as to any substances or any of that. If you look into their data mining operation, you'll find that they probably don't even want to tell you that kind of stuff because it would prove that most of their other findings are basically bullshit. You know, I invite that transparency to be available to us to see this 25 years of data or exactly what you extrapolated out of the data. Because if you could just sit there and be like, well, you know, on 420, the amount of people that died in fatal car crashes that tested positive for marijuana or that were impaired, period, you know, and didn't have alcohol in their system. Because as we know, alcohol is the number one killer out there on the road. In fact, if you look at all traffic fatalities, all of them, half of them are from alcohol related in some ways. And we're even talking about pedestrian deaths where people walking around town die. Half of those people were drunk. So this isn't no bullshit.
Specify what exact drug impair. We can't pull that data.
The study comes as Canada this summer is expected to legalize pot.
All right, this isn't no big deal. So there you have it. I don't really have a whole lot to say about this study or whatever you want to call it. But again, you can look into the data. Here's one of the doctors right here. And now when you look at the data, when you look at his deal right here, this is basically a statement from John Staples. On April 20th each year, thousands of Americans celebrate the intoxicating properties of marijuana on a popular counterculture holiday known as 420. Now right away, I don't like the wording, intoxicating properties of marijuana. When you say intoxicating, you are leaning towards something that is like alcohol or something else toxic, that where the more you do of it, the more your condition becomes questionable as to whether or not you have hand-eye coordination, functionability to operate motor vehicles or other machinery. You know, like we're talking about like if you take too many Xanaxes, or if you take too many pills in general, or if you drink too many drinks. You know, I mean, I'm sure if somebody smokes too much weed, it's only a matter of time before they're not impaired or whatever you want to call it. I don't really call it impaired. That's not really a good way to classify it. And intoxication, definitely not. It almost implies that smoking cannabis makes you feel like you just drank some beer or liquor, which is totally bullshit. And these studies and these people that put this kind of rhetoric forward always try to associate the high from marijuana with alcohol, for a lack of a better way to put it. Anyway, he goes on to say legal marijuana sales surge in anticipation of the high holiday, and college students report increased cannabis consumption on 420 itself. In many cities, activists and enthusiasts gather at public celebrations that feature synchronized mass consumption of cannabis at 4:20 p.m. Makes sense. Driving simulation studies indicate that higher blood delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol concentrations decrease reaction times and increase variability in speed and lane position, while some epidemiologic studies suggest that acute cannabis intoxication increases crash risk. He said, while some, all right, and then this other stuff he's saying, driving simulation studies indicate. All right, now I could sit here and take your little driver's simulation test, or maybe. I want to know what driver's simulation studies you're talking about there, because I think that's totally like stacked. The fucking funny part of it is, and I always bring this up, is I might, after I'm done making this video, start playing some Need for Speed or even Grand Theft Auto or something where you drive. You know, driving is like your ability to drive really good on a fucking simulation is paramount to even succeeding enough in the game to advance to the next level. But whatever, man. You have no proof at all that cannabis can impair driving. Period. There's just no way that you've done that research. And if you had, we'd be hearing about it in this up here instead of all the stuff you're talking about. So anyway, he goes on to say, we hypothesized that the April 20th cannabis celebration might be associated with a population level increase in the risk of fatal traffic crash involvement. And so on and so forth. Nowhere in this study does he ever say, hey, we looked at the substances that the people involved in these fatal crashes were on, and yeah, there was a lot of cannabis. He does go on to say that there was, not that there was in these particular, he poured over 25 years of data from the NTSB. So yeah, he's going to see that almost 45% of all traffic fatalities involve alcohol. And he had to mention that because you can't not mention that. That's very fucking important shit, you know. And he also downplayed the whole idea that you should use this as Reefer Madness, but he did say that if you're considering legalizing cannabis in your area, you might want to look at this. So I don't know. He's kind of on the fence on that if you look at both of those statements. But overall, I think he pretty much cautioned against glamorizing this as some kind of a total guarantee that cannabis caused these accidents and that you should worry about driving on 420. I don't think he ever said that. Now, if you look at the headlines, though, a lot of people do say that. And if you know what I just said, if you take all that into consideration, there are some headlines that you can respectfully say without, sensationalizing drama or being just facetious with your rhetoric. So let's look at some of these headlines. Drivers who get stoned on 420 are just as dangerous as drivers who get drunk on Super Bowl Sunday. Are you fucking kidding me? I couldn't find exact charts or whatever for the Super Bowl Sunday thing, but I'm gonna guess that the one that I did find was this one with St. Patrick's Day, and oh my god! So I'm not laughing because I think that this is like funny that people are dying. These are numbers on paper, but at the same time, this is serious business. This is 28 people die every day. Every 51 minutes, someone is killed in a drunk driving situation, whether it's the driver just running into a tree or, unfortunately, a drunk driver hitting other people and killing them. And a lot of the times, the driver that's drunk survives those accidents. But anyway, all that bullshit aside, you got St. Patrick's Day in 2010, 129 people. That's 101 extra people, representing, a over quadrupling. This is like a 5 times the amount of people died on St. Patrick's Day from drunk driving. And I mean, you look at the alcohol statistics, and there's just really no way that you can draw any conclusion other than alcohol is just out of control with the amount of death involved with alcohol and driving. It's too much to look at, There's everything from you got your 4th of July spike in fatalities, Christmas, Thanksgiving, every holiday. There's a lot of them too. You got Christmas, Thanksgiving, 4th of July. What else is another big drinking? Obviously St. Patrick's Day, New Year's Eve, Super Bowl Sunday is actually another holiday. I mean, that's 6 right there times in 1 year that we got this ridiculous spike. And it's not just a 12% increase like they're trying to lay on weed for 420, even though that none of those deaths have anything to do with fucking people smoking weed. I don't know, you know, you can't go there. You just can't. Alcohol is just way crazier. So anyway, and we'll see some more of these headlines. U.S. data shows increase in fatal crashes on 420 day of pot events. You know, that's fair. I mean, you didn't really say that there was a connection there. So you're just saying, yeah, there was an increase on 420. And oh, yeah, guess what? That's a day where there's some pot events. It's a loose connection, but you didn't say it was causation so much or like this. This is just sensationalizing out of control rhetoric, in my opinion. And I did tweet the writer of this article because there's just no excuse for this kind of shit. All right. You just can't do it, man. Anyway, it's in here. Yeah. Without any scientific evidence that cannabis causes this so-called impairment, that makes it hard to operate a motor vehicle. Your headline is reckless and dangerously wrong. Even Dr. Staples cautioned that this report is not to be construed as reefer madness. Somebody else tweeted back at this that where in this article do you refer to actual data on cannabis and driving? All it is an overall accident stat with no reference to cannabis. Most accidents had no police data on drug testing, so there's no way to confirm that marijuana was involved. But researchers think that the drug was responsible for some crashes. Researchers don't get... I mean, if you don't see it in the data, you don't get to make that conclusion, which is why they never did make that conclusion. So that statement, too, was loaded. So overall, let's see... 420 effect, pot celebration day tied to rise in fatal crashes. No, it's not. So Live Science, you're wrong. And then of course you got ABC News, you know, they're just going to go ahead and tie that right to 420 marijuana. And you can say that marijuana, the holiday, tied to the fatal. I mean, you can say that, but you can't. I mean, it's more of a coincidence. I don't know. And it's a combination of that and like all these studies that I see where they prove something negative about weed, it just seems like the people running the study were highly motivated to come to the conclusion that they came to. So they were going to find a way to make the data support it. And, you know, you can say what you want about the actual numbers. Who knows? Here's a fair one. Fatal car crashes happen more often than usual on 420. Study finds. And then they have some pot leaves in their picture. So it's not like they're really even saying much there, except for, hey, oh yeah, 420 is that one day. Stoners celebrating 420 may be responsible for annual bump in traffic deaths. Gizmodo does what you call fence ride. It's like they know that there isn't no supporting evidence to say, you know, empirical data that says, yeah, all these wrecks happen because of cannabis. So they say maybe responsible. It's a good way to be in the fence. I read the article and I wasn't too impressed. They were kind of a little bit more on the wrong side of the fence, in my opinion. The Inquisitor study shows fatal car crashes increased greatly on marijuana holiday known as 420 Day. Doubters speak out. See, I didn't look at that, but I'm sure everything I said has been spoken about. Let's check that out. We'll fly blind. Despite the study, many supporters of marijuana use and few non-users are speaking out with serious doubts. Independent states that fatal car crashes increased by as much as 12% in the afternoon of the dates of 420. Let's see, where's the pushback? Higher Ground tweeted, the data in this paper does not identify whether any of the drivers involved in motor accidents on the day of question were either under the influence of marijuana or responsible for the accident if they were under any influences. They're just talking about the people that died. Who knows if they were even at fault of the car crash. So that could take his numbers down even more. Everybody keeps referencing the fact that people think it's safe. When polled and asked, people generally think it's safe to drive after smoking weed. And they also found that millions of people responded to this question, yes, I've smoked weed before after driving. And here's the actual raw numbers. 1.3 million people were in this survey. 882,000 car crashes from 92 to 2016. 978,328 fatalities. 1,369 drivers involved in fatal crashes on 420. 2,453 drivers involved in fatal crashes on previous and after weak controlled days. So anyway, we have some more pushback. The Journal of American Medical Association went on to say that driving after cannabis consumption is surprisingly common despite evidence of decreased reaction times. Many have taken to Twitter to point out their objections to a lot of the obvious issues. So Dr. Peter Grinspoon, there was no drug testing. The researchers think that marijuana was involved in these accidents. No one advocates using cannabis before driving, but this study, like so many of these targeted anti-marijuana studies, seems more like politics than science. Like I said, man, I don't think you're going to see anything that I didn't already say. TNT, most accidents had no police data on drug testing, so there's no way to confirm that marijuana is involved, but researchers think the drug was responsible. Keyword think. Any stats on marijuana causing car accidents that doesn't separate out drivers who were also drunk from those were only... Yeah, that's fine. I already said that too, but the thing is they're not even showing you that anybody was drunk or stoned or any of that. In fact, I'm sure they could see a lot of that information when they looked through the data, but they didn't report back on any of it. So the onus was on them to actually say that these accidents had anything to do with cannabis. And again, this is like the fourth article that I polled where I look at it, and I'm not sure what the age of these people in this picture actually is. Look at Harry Potter over here. But but I'm guessing that they're young, but what they really are is we're supposed to perceive them to be way younger than we're supposed to look at these guys and be like, look at these 10-year-old and 12-year-old kids smoking weed. That's what we're supposed to be saying about that picture. And I seen a video where they were focused on younger people. They're framing this as, and that's another thing that you see when you look at actual road statistics of deaths, is people generally getting in car wrecks after 4:20 p.m. are almost always teenagers, or not teenagers, but anywhere from, the younger groups, because, they're, I don't know, it just seems like you're not going to find too many car wrecks even before 4 o'clock period anyway. What the fuck's that? Any more of these that are worth a fuck? Cannabis holiday 420 linked to a spike in crashes. Yeah, it's kind of a bummer. It's kind of a buzzkill to look at the amount of negative articles that want to side effects of weed. Marijuana could cause mental illness, fatal car crashes. IB Times. IB Times has like a wide range of different writers that contribute, so hard to say, but they got a lot of Reefer Madness pouring out of there. Stay off the roads on 420 day. I thought that photo was like, holy shit. I don't know if everybody can see that. Let's see if they got the full picture there. I found out that there isn't very much video on this subject. Oh, yep. There's your scare tactic. All right, guys. I'm done with this. What's my final opinion about 420 is go have fun, and I don't recommend ever that anybody that feels like they're impaired should drive a motor vehicle. That being said, yeah, man, smoking cannabis and driving is not what these people are trying to tell you it is. That's it.